Ladies and gentlemen, there's an undeniable tension that runs through life, a pull between where we are and where we desire to be. At the heart of this pull is a single, powerful truth: consistency. Not in the grand gestures, nor in the occasional bursts of enthusiasm, but in the steady, often unnoticed rhythm of our actions. It's a quiet force shaping us in ways we rarely see, but always see them. Many of us wait for that surge of motivation, believing it to be the fuel for our journey. But motivation, as you've likely experienced, is fleeting. It rises like a wave and crashes just as quickly. What remains after that wave recedes? Discipline. The quiet, unwavering commitment to continue even when the allure of excitement has vanished. It is discipline that bridges the gap between where we are and where we wish to go. But why do we struggle so much with consistency? It is not simply a matter of laziness or lack of will. It's a conflict deeply human between the ease of the moment and the effort required for growth. There's comfort in staying as we are, and yet an undeniable yearning to become something more. That conflict between comfort and growth is the essence of the struggle. At first, forcing yourself to be consistent feels like a burden. The mind rebels and the body resists, clinging to familiar patterns. But here's the thing: what begins as effort, as strain, slowly transforms. Consistency, when maintained, becomes second nature. The task that once felt heavy now feels light. What once required force now happens with ease. This brings us to a profound realization: the actions we take repeatedly shape who we become. If you want to change yourself, you must first change what you do, not once, not occasionally, but consistently. Our identity is not a fixed thing, but a reflection of our habits. Every action repeated enough times becomes a part of us. And often the path to greatness is not paved with grand moments of brilliance. No, it's the mundane, the seemingly insignificant daily tasks that lead to profound change. The quiet act of showing up, doing what needs to be done, even when no one is watching, is where the real magic happens. The extraordinary is hidden in the ordinary. Now, there's something curious about resistance. It often appears strongest where the path is most meaningful. If you find yourself pushing back against something, ask yourself why. The more we resist, the more likely it is that we are on the verge of something important. Resistance is not an enemy, it's a guide pointing us to what we truly need. Finally, consistency teaches us one of life's most valuable lessons: patience. We live in a world that glorifies quick results, but true mastery, true transformation takes time. The journey is not a sprint, it is a marathon. And in that slow, steady progression, we learn something far more valuable than any immediate reward. We learn to grow, to persist, to trust in the process. So force yourself to be consistent, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Not because it feels natural at first, but because over time it will. Remember, it's not the waves of motivation that carry us forward, but the steady, unbroken current of discipline. Consistency at its core is one of the most powerful forces in shaping our lives. It is the daily actions, the small but steady steps we take, that ultimately determine the trajectory of our growth and success. We often think that it's the big dramatic moments that define us, the breakthrough, the leap of faith, the sudden stroke of genius. But the truth is, it is the quiet, persistent effort over time that molds us into who we are meant to be. Consider for a moment how nature operates. The river doesn't carve its way through rock in a single sweep. It does so through the relentless flow of water, drop by drop over time. The same principle applies to human endeavors. It is not the one-off heroic efforts, but the consistent application of energy, focus, and determination that brings about lasting change. In this way, consistency is far more potent than any short burst of effort. We tend to romanticize the idea of immediate results. We want to plant a seed and see it bloom overnight. But real growth doesn't work that way. True progress is often invisible in the moment, unfolding gradually like the slow opening of a flower. It is only when we look back after weeks, months, or even years of consistent action that we realize just how far we've come. And this is why consistency requires trust in the process, trust that the effort will pay off, even when the results aren't immediately visible. In the beginning, we may not see the fruits of our labor. It can feel like we're pushing a boulder uphill, making little headway. But with each push, we build strength. With each step forward, however small, we are laying the foundation for future success. The results, though delayed, are inevitable if we remain committed. Consistency is also the great equalizer. While we may not always have control over our natural talents or the circumstances of our lives, we do have control over actions. It is within our power to show up day after day after day and put in the work. This is the difference between those who dream and those who achieve. The dreamer may be inspired by a vision, but the achiever brings that vision to life through relentless, consistent effort. When we commit to consistency, we align ourselves with the forces of nature. We begin to understand that greatness is not a destination, but a habit cultivated over time. It is not the dramatic peaks that define our journey, but the steady, consistent progress that leads us there. In the end, consistency doesn't just change what we do, it changes who we are. It instills in us patience, resilience, and the understanding that every small effort, when compounded over time, has the power to transform our lives in ways we could never have imagined. Motivation for many is the spark that gets us started on a new journey. It's the burst of energy we feel when we set a goal, the excitement of imagining ourselves achieving something great. But as anyone who has pursued a long-term goal knows, motivation is fleeting. It ebbs and flows, often leaving us when we need it most. This is where discipline comes in, standing firm when motivation falters. Unlike motivation, which is often driven by emotion and circumstance, discipline is grounded in commitment. Discipline is what remains when the initial excitement fades. It's the force that compels us to act even when we don't feel like it. It asks us to continue showing up, not because we are inspired in the moment, but because we have made a decision to do so. While motivation may push us in the short term, it is discipline that carries us through the long, often challenging path toward real achievement. There is a certain romanticism around the idea of being motivated all the time, always feeling that drive, that surge of energy. But the reality is that no one is consistently motivated. Life is full of distractions, setbacks, and days when it's far easier to give in to inertia. In those moments, discipline acts as the anchor that keeps us steady. It doesn't rely on feelings or mood. Discipline says, I will act because I said I would. And that is where real progress happens, when we act despite how we feel. Discipline also requires us to detach from immediate gratification. Motivation often craves a quick reward, a visible sign of success that keeps the fire burning. But discipline teaches us to play the long game, to take satisfaction in the process rather than the outcome. When we are disciplined, we begin to understand that the reward isn't always immediate, and that's okay. The act of showing up or sticking to the plan becomes the victory itself. Moreover, discipline builds resilience. Each time we push through resistance and follow through on our commitments, we strengthen our ability to do so again in the future. It becomes a habit, a part of who we are. With each act of discipline, we reinforce our capacity to stay the course, to endure discomfort for the sake of something greater. And as this habit grows, we start to see ourselves not as someone who waits for motivation, but as someone who does what needs to be done regardless of how we feel in the moment. While motivation may light the fire, discipline keeps it burning. It gives us the structure to keep moving forward, even when the path is difficult or the goal seems distant. Over time, we come to rely less on the unpredictable waves of inspiration and more on the steady, reliable force of discipline. It becomes the foundation upon which lasting success is built. Because in the end, it's not about how often we feel inspired, but how often we act in the face of challenge. Within each of us, there exists a tension, a subtle yet persistent struggle between what we desire to become and what feels comfortable in the moment. This inner conflict arises because growth requires effort, and effort requires stepping outside of the familiar, outside of the comfort we've known. At its core, this conflict is a battle between our higher aspirations and the part of us that seeks to avoid discomfort. When we set goals or envision a better version of ourselves, we do so with a sense of optimism and determination. We picture the results, the success, the achievements, the personal transformation. But the road to that vision is not paved with easy choices. It's filled with obstacles, and more often than not, the biggest obstacle is our own resistance. The moment we begin to move toward that vision, something within us pulls back. We feel the weight of effort, the challenge of change, and a part of us, perhaps the deeper, more primal part, seeks to preserve the status quo. This is the root of inner conflict. This tension is natural. Our minds are wired to seek comfort and avoid pain, to gravitate toward what is known and predictable. But growth, by its very nature, is uncomfortable. It asks us to stretch beyond our current limitations, to embrace the unknown, and to endure the growing pains that come with any meaningful transformation. In this sense, inner conflict is not a sign that something is wrong, but a sign that we are on the verge of growth. It signals that we are stepping into territory that challenges us, and that resistance is merely the mind's attempt to keep us safe in what it knows. Yet this conflict can be incredibly frustrating. We want the benefits of change, but we also want to avoid the discomfort that comes with it. The mind begins to generate excuses, rationalizations, and doubts. Maybe I'm not ready, maybe tomorrow will be better. Is this even worth it? These thoughts are the voice of resistance, trying to lure us back into complacency. The challenge is to recognize these thoughts for what they are, a natural part of the process, and not allow them to dictate our actions. The key to navigating inner conflict is to understand that discomfort is temporary, but the growth that comes from enduring it is lasting. The mind may resist at first, but with each step we take, the resistance begins to weaken. What once felt difficult or even impossible becomes more manageable as we prove to ourselves through action that we are capable of more than we initially believed. Furthermore, this inner conflict offers a unique opportunity for self-awareness. It gives us a chance to observe our own tendencies, how we react to discomfort, how we shy away from challenge, how we negotiate with ourselves to avoid the hard work. In observing these patterns, we can begin to dismantle them, choosing instead to act from a place of intention rather than avoidance. Ultimately, inner conflict is a companion on the journey of growth. It is not an enemy to be defeated, but a guide to be understood. The very presence of this tension signals that we are in the process of change, that we are moving towards something worthwhile. And the more we embrace this discomfort, the more we learn to trust ourselves, knowing that on the other side of conflict lies not just accomplishment, but a deeper sense of self-mastery. At first glance, effort can feel like an overwhelming burden. When we set out to do something new or difficult, the task ahead looms large, and the mind immediately perceives it as hard, requiring energy and sacrifice. We tell ourselves that it will take too much, that we're not ready, or that the struggle will be too great to bear. But this perception of effort is often an illusion, one that dissolves with time and persistence. In the beginning, when we force ourselves to take those first steps toward consistency, everything feels heavy. There's resistance in every movement, and our minds focus on how much we are exerting ourselves. The discomfort is palpable, and it is easy to think that this struggle will persist indefinitely. Yet if we stick with it, something interesting happens. The very things that once felt difficult become easier, almost natural. What required effort yesterday becomes automatic today. This is the illusion of effort, that the strain we feel at the start will always remain. But in truth, effort is often a temporary sensation. When we are unfamiliar with a task or a routine, it feels laborious, not because the task itself is inherently difficult, but because we have not yet adapted to it. Over time, with practice and repetition, the brain rewires itself, the body adjusts, and what was once a conscious effort becomes a subconscious habit. The same action that once required all of our focus and energy now flows with ease. Consider learning a new skill, like playing an instrument or mastering a sport. In the early stages, every movement feels awkward and strained. Each note played or step taken seems to demand full concentration. But with continued practice, the hands and body begin to move without thinking. The muscles remember, and the mind no longer fights the process. What once seemed insurmountable becomes fluid, almost effortless. This shift from effort to ease is a reminder of the adaptability of human nature. We are built to grow into challenges, to expand our capacity over time. The initial strain is not a sign that we are incapable, but rather that we are in the process of becoming capable. And as we continue, we often surprise ourselves with how much more we can handle than we initially believed. Yet the illusion of effort can trap us if we don't see beyond it. Many people give up too soon, convinced that the difficulty they feel in the beginning is a permanent state. They interpret the initial discomfort as a sign that the task is not meant for them or that they are not suited for the challenge. But the truth is that everyone who has ever mastered something has gone through this same phase of perceived difficulty. The difference is that those who persist come to realize that the effort itself changes over time. Moreover, effort in many ways is subjective. What feels like hard work to one person might feel easy to another simply because they have pushed through that phase of discomfort. This is why comparing our beginning to someone else's mastery is misleading. The person who makes something look effortless has likely put in countless hours of work, transforming what once was difficult into something that seems almost second nature. In the end, the illusion of effort is a lesson in patience and persistence. The key is to recognize that the strain we feel at the start is not a sign to stop, but a natural part of the process. As we keep moving forward step by step, the very act of effort becomes lighter until we reach a point where what once seemed like a mountain now feels like a gentle hill. Effort, when sustained, gradually fades into flow, and that is when we realize that the hardest part was never the task itself, but simply starting and sticking with it. Who we are is not defined by our thoughts, intentions, or even our aspirations, but by the actions we take consistently. Our identity is shaped and revealed through what we do, not merely what we say we will do. Each decision, each repeated behavior builds upon the last, forming the foundation of who we become over time. We often think of identity as something fixed, something we are born with or that is shaped by external forces. But in reality, our identity is fluid, ever evolving with the choices we make. When we engage in consistent actions, we begin to craft a version of ourselves that is aligned with those actions. If we repeatedly act with discipline, we become disciplined. If we continually push through challenges, we become resilient. Our actions create the narrative of who we are. It is through action that we bring our inner aspirations into the world. No matter how much we may want to be a certain type of person, a dedicated worker, a compassionate friend, a successful creator, those desires remain abstract until they are acted upon. In the absence of action, our identity is just a potential, a possibility that may or may not ever be realized. Action is what turns that potential into reality. This is why consistency is so crucial. It is not the occasional extraordinary effort that defines us, but the regular everyday actions. These are the building blocks of identity. Consider someone who decides they want to become a writer. It is not the one day of writing inspiration that makes them a writer, but the act of sitting down day after day and putting words on paper. Over time, with each small effort, their identity as a writer is forged, not through some sudden transformation, but through the slow, steady accumulation of action. There's an empowering truth hidden in this understanding. We are not stuck with the identity we currently have. At any moment, we can begin to reshape who we are by changing what we do. If you wish to be more disciplined, act in a disciplined manner consistently. If you desire to be more creative, engage in creative activities regularly. The mind and body adapt to the patterns we create through action. In this way, we hold the power to redefine ourselves, not by some grand gesture, but by the choices we make day in and day out. At the same time, there's a flip side to this truth. If we engage in actions that are contrary to the person we want to become, those actions too will shape us. Procrastination, avoidance, or self-sabotage, if repeated, will form an identity of someone who struggles with progress or avoids challenges. Our habits, whether good or bad, are constantly shaping our identity, whether we are conscious of it or not. The beauty of identity through action is that it does not demand perfection. We don't need to get it right every time. What matters is the trend, the overall direction of our actions. Even when we falter, as long as we get back on track and maintain our commitment to the actions that align with who we want to be, we continue to grow into that identity. This process of becoming through action is deeply human. It is not about waiting for the right moment or being in the right mindset. It is about doing even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable. Through each action, we reinforce the identity we are creating bit by bit, day by day. In the end, we are not defined by what we think or say, but by what we do. Our actions carve out our identity, and over time, they solidify into the person we see ourselves as and who the world recognizes us to be. By aligning our actions with our aspirations, we can consciously shape who we become, understanding that every small, consistent step brings us closer to the person we want to be. Life is often filled with ordinary tasks, the day-to-day routines that seem repetitive, even monotonous. It's easy to overlook these moments, to view them as insignificant, or to believe that real progress only comes through grand gestures and remarkable achievements. But the truth is, the mundane is where the true foundation of success is built. It is in embracing these small, everyday actions that we begin to see their profound impact over time. We are conditioned to seek excitement and immediate results, to chase after the big life-changing moments, but the reality is those moments are rare. The bulk of our lives is spent in the quiet repetition of tasks that may seem trivial, but are actually the building blocks of greatness. The key is to recognize the value hidden in these seemingly insignificant actions, for it is through consistent engagement with the mundane that we lay the groundwork for the extraordinary. When you look closely at any meaningful achievement, behind the scenes you'll find hours of mundane effort, repetition, practice, and refinement. Whether it's a master musician, a skilled athlete, or a successful entrepreneur, their success wasn't born from a single moment of inspiration or a dramatic leap. It came from showing up day after day to do the work that others often overlook. These individuals embrace the mundane, understanding that mastery is found in the repetition of basic actions performed with intention and focus. This approach runs counter to our desire for instant gratification. We want to see results now, to feel like our efforts are immediately paying off. But the mundane tasks, the ones that don't provide instant feedback or visible progress, are the very things that cultivate discipline and patience. It is in those quiet moments when no one is watching that the real work is done. The willingness to engage with the mundane teaches us that success is not just about talent or luck, it's about persistence, about being able to endure the small, repetitive steps that lead to big changes over time. Moreover, the mundane offers us an opportunity to be present. When we stop viewing these tasks as mere hurdles to be overcome and instead embrace them as part of the journey, we begin to find meaning in them. Whether it's practicing a skill, working on a project, or simply maintaining daily routines, each task becomes a chance to immerse ourselves in the moment. The mundane teaches us mindfulness, allowing us to focus not on the end result, but on the process itself. When we are fully engaged in these small actions, we begin to see that there is beauty and value in the simplicity of repetition. There is also a humbling element in embracing the mundane. It reminds us that no matter how grand our ambitions, we must always start with the basics. It brings us back to the reality that progress is not made in leaps and bounds, but in small, steady steps. The mundane tasks keep us grounded, reminding us that success is a journey, not a destination. They teach us humility as we learn to respect the process and the slow, steady progress that comes from consistent effort. In fact, the mundane is where resilience is forged. It's easy to be motivated when things are exciting, when we see immediate progress or receive recognition. But true resilience is developed in those moments when the work feels repetitive, when the results are not immediate, and yet we continue to show up. It's in those moments that we build the mental toughness required to keep going, even when the path seems long and the rewards distant. The mundane is not an obstacle, but a proving ground for our perseverance. When we learn to embrace the mundane, we begin to shift our perspective on success and progress. We stop waiting for the big moments to validate our efforts and start finding fulfillment in the small, consistent actions that move us forward. Over time, these seemingly insignificant tasks accumulate, creating momentum and building a strong foundation for whatever we aim to achieve. In the end, the mundane is not something to be avoided or rushed through. It is to be embraced, for it holds the key to long-term growth and lasting success. When we recognize the value in these small, everyday tasks, we discover that they are not distractions from the bigger picture, but integral parts of it. It is through the mundane that we ultimately unlock the extraordinary potential within ourselves. Resistance is a powerful force, one that shows up whenever we embark on something meaningful. It emerges as doubt, fear, procrastination, or discomfort, pushing us away from the path we know we should be on. While our natural instinct is to avoid this resistance, to see it as an obstacle or something to overcome, there is a deeper truth. Resistance itself can be a guide pointing us toward the areas of our lives that matter most. Resistance tends to arise when we are on the verge of growth, when we are about to step into something new or challenging. It is a signal that we are moving beyond our comfort zone into territory that has the potential to transform us. The tasks or goals that generate the most resistance are often the ones that hold the greatest opportunity for personal development. The greater the resistance, the more important the task. Many times we mistake resistance for a sign that we are not ready, that the task is too difficult, or that we are not capable. We feel the discomfort and interpret it as a reason to stop. But in reality, resistance is an invitation to push forward. It is there precisely because what lies on the other side is meaningful. The mind, in its desire to keep us safe and comfortable, generates resistance as a way to protect us from the unknown. But safety is not the same as fulfillment. Avoiding resistance may keep us comfortable, but it also keeps us stagnant. When we start to view resistance as a guide, we begin to see it not as something to be feared, but as something to be embraced. It highlights the areas in our lives where we are being called to grow. If we pay attention to the moments where we feel the most resistance, whether it's starting a new project, having a difficult conversation, or pursuing a dream, we can identify the places where our true potential lies. These are the moments where, if we lean in instead of pulling away, we can experience the greatest breakthroughs. Resistance is also a mirror reflecting back to us our own fears and insecurities. It shows us where we are holding ourselves back, where we are holding ourselves back, where we are afraid of failure, judgment, or uncertainty. But it is in facing these fears, in moving through the resistance, that we begin to dissolve the limitations that have been keeping us small. Each time we push through resistance, we expand our capacity for courage, resilience, and self-belief. Moreover, resistance helps us develop a deeper relationship with ourselves. It forces us to confront the inner narratives that keep us stuck, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we are capable of, and what we deserve. By acknowledging the resistance and choosing to act despite it, we rewrite those narratives. We prove to ourselves through action that we are stronger than we thought, that we are capable of more than we imagined. In this way, resistance becomes a form of inner guidance. It is not trying to stop us, it is trying to show us where the work needs to be done. It's a compass pointing directly toward the areas where we have the most potential for growth and transformation. The challenge is to trust the process, to recognize that the discomfort we feel is temporary, and that what lies beyond the resistance is far greater than the comfort of staying where we are. Over time, as we become more familiar with resistance, we begin to anticipate it. We know that it will show up whenever we are doing something important. But instead of running from it, we learn to lean into it, to see it as part of the journey rather than an obstacle in the way. This shift in perspective allows us to move through life with greater intention, understanding that the very things we resist are often the things we need the most. In the end, resistance is not an enemy. It is a guide, a teacher, and a signal that we are on the right path. By embracing it, by following where it leads, we open ourselves to the possibility of true growth and transformation. Resistance, far from being something to fear, is the force that drives us toward our highest potential. We live in a world that prizes immediacy. Instant gratification has become the norm, whether it's the ability to order something online and have it delivered the next day, or the constant stream of information that flows through our screens. We are conditioned to expect results quickly. This mindset, however, is at odds with the deeper, more enduring truths of success and fulfillment. True progress, the kind that lasts, requires patience, perseverance, and a commitment to playing the long game. The long game is about thinking beyond the momentary rewards and looking towards sustained growth over time. It asks us to focus not on what we can achieve today or tomorrow, but what we are building for the future. This perspective fundamentally shifts how we approach our goals and challenges. Instead of seeking shortcuts or easy wins, we understand that real success is often the result of consistent, small efforts applied over a long period of time. Playing the long game requires us to let go of the desire for immediate outcomes. It asks us to embrace the process, knowing that the results will come in their own time. This mindset isn't always easy to maintain. The world is full of distractions that promise quick fixes, diet fads, get-rich-quick schemes, or overnight success stories, but these are illusions, temporary solutions that rarely lead to lasting change. The long game, by contrast, is grounded in reality. It recognizes that anything worthwhile takes time to cultivate. Consider the growth of a tree. From the moment the seed is planted, it takes years for the tree to grow to its full height. Day after day, the tree must endure the elements, storms, droughts, and winds, yet it continues to grow slowly but surely. If we were to dig up the tree every few days to see if it was growing, we would only disrupt its natural process. Similarly, when we expect instant results in our own lives, we undermine the slow, steady progress that ultimately leads to lasting success. The long game also teaches us the value of patience. It reminds us that setbacks and failures are not the end of the journey, but part of it. In the short term, failure can feel devastating, but when viewed through the lens of the long game, it becomes a valuable teacher. Each mistake, each obstacle is an opportunity to learn and grow stronger. When we are playing the long game, we understand that temporary setbacks are just that, temporary. They do not define the outcome, but rather contribute to the overall process of growth. Furthermore, the long game fosters resilience. In a culture that often values speed over substance, it is easy to give up when things don't go as planned. But those who play the long game understand that perseverance is key. They recognize that success isn't about how quickly they can achieve their goals, but about their ability to keep moving forward, even when progress seems slow. The long game is about showing up day after day, regardless of the challenges, knowing that each step brings them closer to their ultimate vision. One of the greatest gifts of playing the long game is that it shifts our focus from outcomes to mastery. When we are no longer obsessed with immediate results, we begin to appreciate the craft of what we are doing. Whether it's learning a new skill, building a business, or improving ourselves, the long game allows us to immerse ourselves in the process. We stop rushing to the finish line and instead take time to refine our skills, deepen our understanding, and enjoy the journey. Mastery, after all, is not about reaching a specific milestone, but about the continuous pursuit of excellence over time. Another aspect of the long game is its emphasis on sustainability. Quick wins often come at the expense of long-term growth. Whether it's burning out from working too hard, too fast, or cutting corners to achieve a short-term goal, the consequences can be damaging. The long game, however, encourages us to pace ourselves. It's not about sprinting to the finish line, but about running a marathon. This mindset helps us avoid burnout as we learn to balance effort with rest, intensity with patience. We come to understand that success is not a race, but a journey that unfolds over time. The long game also cultivates deeper relationships. In a world that often values convenience over connection, playing the long game in relationships requires time and effort. It's about investing in others, showing up consistently, and nurturing trust over time. Whether in personal or professional contexts, the strongest relationships are built through mutual commitment and a shared willingness to grow together. When we approach relationships with a long-term perspective, we are less concerned with immediate rewards and more focused on the lasting bonds that develop through genuine connection. Perhaps most importantly, the long game teaches us to align our actions with our values. In the short term, it's easy to be swayed by external pressures, what's trendy, what others expect, or what seems like the fastest route to success. But when we commit to the long game, we anchor ourselves in something deeper. We make decisions not based on what will bring us the quickest reward, but on what aligns with our principles and long-term vision. This alignment provides a sense of purpose and direction that sustains us even when the path is difficult. Ultimately, playing the long game is an act of faith. It requires us to trust that our efforts, though they may not yield immediate results, will pay off in the end. It's about believing in the process and staying committed to the journey, even when progress is slow or invisible. The long game reminds us that true success, whether it's personal growth, professional achievement, or fulfilling relationships, takes time. It's not about winning the race, but about staying in the race, cultivating the patience, resilience, and persistence that lead to lasting fulfillment. In the end, those who play the long game are not chasing after fleeting moments of success. They are building something far more enduring, a life rooted in purpose, mastery, and a deep understanding that what matters most cannot be rushed, but must be nurtured over time. In the end, consistency is the silent force that shapes our lives in profound ways. It is not the extraordinary moments, but the everyday actions, the patient endurance of the mundane, and the willingness to embrace resistance that define who we become. The illusion of effort fades as we realize that growth comes through repetition and that our identity is forged not by fleeting motivation, but by disciplined action. By playing the long game, we learn that real success is not an instant reward, but a result of sustained effort and commitment. Resistance, far from being an obstacle, becomes a guide that points us toward areas of growth. We cultivate resilience not through grand achievements, but through our ability to show up day after day, even when progress is slow. In this journey, we come to understand that mastery is a process, that the seemingly insignificant actions we take each day are the building blocks of our future. We grow not by rushing to the finish line, but by embracing the process, trusting that our consistent actions will lead us toward lasting fulfillment. True success lies in the steady, intentional steps we take over time, shaping not just what we achieve, but who we become along the way.